to order, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. All right. The Secretary will note the roll. And we're going to announce that we had an executive session earlier this evening to discuss, we just discussed personnel tonight. Correct. So that's that. So that brings us to public comment. Do we have any forms?
Yes, sir.
No forms. Do we have any volunteers? Anybody would like to say anything? I do, really I do. All right, there being none of those, we'll go ahead and move into the presentations.
Thank you, Mr. Lingren. Tonight, I would like to recognize four of my colleagues, Dr. Ziegler, Mr. Boyer, Dr. Ramage, and Mr. Bickert, for the work they did in getting the Pottsgrove Middle School and High School recognized as an Apple Distinguished School for the next 3 years, from 2018 to 2021. And just real briefly, I want to just share with you that an Apple Distinguished Schools are centers of innovation, leadership, and educational excellence that use Apple products to inspire creativity, collaboration, and critical thinking. They showcase innovation and uses technology in learning, teaching, and the school environment, and have documented artifacts of student accomplishments. So tonight, in front of the board and our community, I'd like to recognize my colleagues. If you would come up and we'll present the plaques to you. Dr. Ziegler.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Ramage. I know Matt's coming somewhere. There he is. Right there. Tony, thank you.
Yep.
And Matt, again, thank you for all your hard work. Apple Distinguished Schools for the next 3 years. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. We can move on now to the approval of our minutes. 5.1, we're asking the board to recommend the approval of the monthly board actions for January 8th, 2019, as submitted.
So moved.
We have a motion by Ms. Grimm and a second by Mr. Lappick to approve the minutes from the January 8th meeting. Does anybody have any questions or comments? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. So ordered without objection.
Moving on to 5.2, approval of the monthly board actions for January 22nd. We ask the board to approve the monthly board actions for January 27th, 2019, as submitted.
Okay, we have a motion and a second by the same two individuals. Does anybody have any questions or comments? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. So ordered without objection.
Moving on to receiving of the accounts for audit.
I move that we accept the high school accounts, middle school accounts, and the cafeteria accounts as presented.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion over here from Mr. Leach and a second, I think, from Mr. Nibbert. So that's a motion and a second. So do we have any questions or comments on these issues? No? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed say no. So ordered without objection.
I move that we ratify the payment of invoices in the amount of $5,268,405.51 for January 2019 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Leach and a second from Tina McIntyre. Does anybody have any questions or comments? No. If not, all, yeah, you do?
No, I'm sorry, I have to clean my throat.
Okay.
Allergies, no, I'm good.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
I move that we approve the treasurer's report for January 2019 as presented and file it for audit.
We have a motion from Mr. Leach and a second from Mr. Hutt. Anybody have any questions or comments? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. So ordered without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Lindgren. Moving on to the report of the superintendent and our student board reps. We asked Savannah and Brianna, please report out. And welcome back.
We were planning the last meeting that got canceled because of snow. We got a chance to go to Lower and sit down with the student leaders of Lower, where it's a bunch of fifth graders, and they're a great group of kids. And we got to ask them a few questions. We asked, what does Pottsgrove do great? And they really enjoy the assemblies that they had. They just had one that day, I think, and it was, I think these guys came and performed like rap songs, but about bullying and stuff like that, and they really enjoyed it. And they really liked the Someone Special dance and the fifth grade pool party, even though none of them have gone to it yet. So, but yeah, they really like the clubs they have. They're really happy in their gifted programs and all that type of stuff, and they really enjoy their art show and the iPads that they get.
The second question we asked them was, what can Pottsgrove do better? They requested more encores, like a sign language class, new rims on the basketball nets at the playground. They said that a lot of the equipment's getting old. They requested sidewalks in front of the building so that they can walk to school. They actually talked about having less styrofoam used in the cafeteria, which I thought was very impressive for fifth graders. They said they wanted softer tissues and enrichment activities for everyone at the school. Enrichment activities for everyone. One of the students that was not in the gifted program said they would like to do more things that the gifted students are able to do.
On the agenda, maybe you skipped over this for a reason, but on your list there was less bullying. Was that?
Yes, that is on our list. We didn't get to dive into that much with the students. It was just sort of mentioned, and then they never really wanted to go back to it. The feel that we got from them was just that, I guess, they wanted, how would you say, like, I don't know.
Yeah, just being nicer, and I guess there's a lot of fights at the playground.
They did mention that. They mentioned that there was a lot of
physical
fighting.
fights, not necessarily just like kids arguing, but like there's a lot of physical fights that go on that I've heard about. And like it was the same thing last year when we went, when me and Mason got to go. The kids said the exact same thing. And the duty aides try to stop it, but I guess it doesn't really.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions, not necessarily, but connected to things that we just heard. I'll start with just a comment regarding bullying in general. The policy committee will report out later, or next month, I guess, has started, but for the public's knowledge, to review our bullying and hazing policies. We'll be looking at this very closely, want to make sure we're doing all that we can with the proactive and the reactive, and that the policies is up to date. So any feedback from anybody is more than welcome. Quick question, since it was brought up, rims, maybe somebody, if that's true, maybe we can add that to,
The rims
yes.
are already taken care of.
They went up today.
Look at that.
Already done. Right.
See, the kids, we hear the kids, excellent.
It's done.
I don't know if you mentioned it tonight, but I saw in your report, there was some discussion with the students regarding walking to Lower. I wonder, Dave or Jeff, is that ever been something considered? Is it worth looking at the pros and cons versus, what we're paying for busing for students that are in walking distance compared to what we would have to do with sidewalks and crossing guards and whatever else? Has that been looked at?
To that respect, we do have sidewalks in front of Lower.
We're the only property on Buchert Road that has sidewalks in front of it. And until the rest of the owners are enticed to put in sidewalks, we really can't have many people walk to Lower. We could have somebody cross Buchert Road with a crossing guard, but I'm not sure that I'd want to stand out there at 7 o'clock in the morning to stop traffic. So I think we're stuck with what we have at this point.
Thank you. Last comment or question, styrofoam. Good point for the fifth graders. Is that something that's been looked at within the district, ever been considered and talked about?
No, Mr. Parker, it hasn't, but obviously it's something, and it wouldn't be fair to Lower or to facilities in Opp at this point. Maybe there is a transition to some things I don't know about, but we can definitely get back to the board on those pieces. Yeah. Yep.
Is that something we have control over, or is that something that the food services provides?
I think that's a conversation we can have with those pieces. And I will ask, if anybody wants to weigh in. I don't have any answers without me going out and getting them tonight, so we can look into it and get back. Does that work? Okay, thank you. We'll do that. Thanks.
I just want to thank you both for the job that you're doing. When you go into the schools, and for example, we talked about the basketball rims, and the kids can really feel heard because right away the facilities crew went out there and took care of that, which is remarkable. And that really, it comes from the work that you're doing. And we appreciate it. I know I certainly appreciate that you're bringing the information back to us for feedback. It's really valuable. Thank you.
Yep, thank you both very much. Appreciate it. Action items regarding personnel.
I make a motion that we approve 10.1, all of 10 except for 10.8.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve personnel items 10.1 through 10.7.
Correct.
Does anybody have any questions?
Everything but
And 9 and 10. All right, I'm sorry. 10.1 through 10.7 and 10.9 and 10.10. Thank you. Right.
8.
As far as I'm concerned,
No,
I like the way I said it first.
Yeah.
10.1 to 10.7.
Yeah.
We're going to stick with that. 10.1 to 10.7.
that's fine.
That's the motion. Do we have a second for that motion? We have a motion and a second. Motion for Mr. Parker, second for Mrs. Grimm, 10.1 through 10.7. Anybody have any questions or comments on just those 7? No? Yes? No? I feel like I'm running an auction. Oh, thank you very much. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Please make your second motion.
well, I'm not voting for 10.8.
I will exercise that authority. We're asking the board to approve supplemental appointments as submitted.
So moved. We have a motion from Mr. Leach and a second from Dr. Nibbert on 10 point supplementals. 10.8. Okay, very good. 10.8. Well, didn't get there yet. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I actually do have a question.
Okay.
In regards to the supplemental payments, we always have a set budget amount, and obviously everything's already approved through the contract and such. Is there anything in here that's actually new, a new club, a new facilitator, a new something that's in this particular list, or is this all just continuing items from years past?
There are no new.
Good to go.
No, no.
Every year.
And mine was hopefully a simple question. What is the Osmo Club? Osmosis? I mean,
It's a computer apparatus. It works with the iPads. No,
Are there any other questions on 10.8? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
No.
Anybody abstaining?
Abstaining.
Okay,
Thank you, Bob.
very good. We like to make everybody feel included. Okay, next thing.
I'd make a motion to combine 10.9, 10.10.
I'll second that.
We have a motion from Mr. Parker, a second from Mrs. Grimm on 10.9, 10.10, which have to do with the Approval Act 93. Does anybody have any questions or comments on those two items? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. So ordered without objection.
Moving on to action items for business, we're asking the board to approve our membership budget for the IU.
I'd like to make a motion for 11 action items to include 11, 11.1, 2, and 3.
Actually, we need to vote on the membership budget
Right.
separately,
Right.
so we can't combine. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's
We
fine.
cannot combine, because I
Thank you.
need to
Thank you,
tally
Mrs.
the votes for the membership budget.
Okay. So I guess we can make a motion?
On 11.1.
Just for one.
11.1.
Got it.
For 11.1, we're asking the board to approve the 2019-20 Montgomery County Intermediate membership service budget as presented.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Mrs. Grimm and a second by Mr. Leach to approve the 2019-2020 MCIU membership budget. And this requires a voice vote for you to have recorded, everybody.
Correct.
So would you like to call the roll and record the votes, please?
I vote yes. I vote yes. We'll just go around. Dr. Nimper? Yes?
Yes.
Oh, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
There you go.
All righty. Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on to 11.2.
I'd like to make a motion, we combine 11.2, creation of a new student activity fund, 11.3, approval of capital project, and 11.4, budget transfers.
Okay, we have a motion on 11.2 through 11.4. Does anybody care to second that motion? We have a motion from Mrs. Grimm, a second from Ms. McIntyre on 11.2 through 11.4. Does anybody have any questions or comments on any of the items in those three items?
Just a quick question. Where does the bowling club meet?
Limerick Bowling Alley.
Pardon?
Limerick Bowling Alley.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. If nobody has any questions or comments, then we can move on to, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. So ordered without objection.
Moving on to 11.5, the middle school camera system upgrade. We're asking the board to approve our system with Berkshire Systems Group for upgrades to the middle school camera system as presented.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Mrs. Grimm, a second from Mr. Leach for the upgrade to the middle school cameras. Does anybody have any questions or comments on this?
Only question I had was, we had just had one that had all about the capital projects and was approved by the committee. Was this discussed in the committee for the additional, like, 13,000?
Actually, originally, the entire thing was in the capital system, so we're actually going to be taking the 25,000 as a grant, so it is already included, yes.
It's in the original part?
Yes.
Okay, so, yeah, pretty much we just approved it.
Right.
Correct.
So, does anybody have any questions, comments, worries, or concerns? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. So ordered without objection.
11.6, the assessment appeals settlement agreement, where our recommendation is to authorize Fox Rothschild LLP to enter into an agreement for the property tax located at 1300 Belmont Road in Lower Pottsgrove Township, identified as tax parcel number 4200 02803008, settling the assessment on the property at $279,950 for the tax year of 2019 or the school tax year of 1920, and each subsequent tax years until the change in the property assessment pursuant to applicable law.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion from Mrs. Grimm and a second from Mrs. Custer on action item 11.6 for the assessment appeal. Does anybody have any questions or comments on this?
Question is, and what was it prior?
I don't know the prior number, but perhaps any other discussion, I think maybe we ought to have a very quick executive session.
Okay.
Obviously, you had a short executive session to give myself the ability to discuss the settlement in a confidential way with the board, the proposed settlement.
So we have a motion, we have a second, we had a question. We're in executive session. Are there any other questions? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. All those opposed say no. All right, moving on.
Thank you. Moving on to number 12, action items for education. We're asking the board to approve the University of Pittsburgh dual enrollment program as submitted.
We have a motion and a second for the dual enrollment program for University of Pittsburgh, right? It was just the one, right? Okay. Does anybody have any questions or comments on this program?
Question, which I think was answered, but I just wanted to verify. The public content says that the cost per course is $245 per student, but I believe that's actually the cost for if they decide to take the credit through college. Is that correct? Okay, just want to make sure about that.
I actually have a few. So we did discuss this somewhat in curriculum, the committee meeting, not this past, the meeting before. And I think there were still some questions that remained unanswered at the time because this was all brand new to us. Since then, I think a few board members have sort of, dug around a little bit and tried to find out some more information about this on their own. I personally did because I do have my former roommate and sorority sister from college is actually a guidance counselor at Montour High School in Western Pennsylvania, and they work closely they offer these PIT classes. So she gave me quite a bit of guidance on how they work and all that stuff. So she was a wealth of information. I believe one of the classes that was that Dr. Ziegler had said we were thinking of offering was cybersecurity, correct? Well, we approved a cybersecurity class for this coming school year. And I'm wondering how is that going to affect if we decide to offer a PIT class in this, how is that going to affect the current class that we just approved?
So the cybersecurity class that we had run, we actually had our computer science teacher, Mr. Lindy, look over this pretty thoroughly. He vetted the PIT's course description along with our course description, and he believes that they're actually pretty similar. So what he is actually looking at doing is making them one of the same course. It's not like there'll be a PIT course, cybersecurity, and then a regular course, cybersecurity. It would be just like we offer currently AP English Literature, and you can take it for Monco credit or not Monco credit. It would be a similar setting as that.
Okay, and how much is the curriculum going to cost us if we switch over to the PIT? Does it cost us any more? I know that cybersecurity was approximately $800 for curriculum writing. How much extra is that going to cost if we decide to add PIT's name to it?
Yeah, so the cybersecurity is mostly an online open source type of curriculum, but I would want to check definitely to make sure that's going to affect it dramatically. We don't believe it's going to change that much.
Okay, and what was, if you could refresh my memory, there was another class, I know you were thinking of German?
So
Correct.
we were looking at cybersecurity. Computer science is a potential one that we're also exploring. German 1 and Pitt's German 101 and 102, which would be, would probably be our German 3 and our German 4.
Okay, which we currently offer, but we don't offer it as a dual enrollment, correct?
That is correct. So we offer dual enrollment in Spanish because we have a teacher with a master's degree, but we don't have that in German. So we believe this will be very popular with our students in German to provide a dual enrollment opportunity. We would also like to provide Spanish. The downside with the Spanish piece is it's currently closed due to high enrollment at Pitt. And we would go on a waiting list. The waiting list would probably put us in the 2020-21 school year.
But correct me if I'm wrong, the Montco dual enrollment, is that 6 credits or 3?
So it's
For Spanish?
It's the same. It is. I want to verify that, to be honest with you. I think it is 6 credits.
So how could we simultaneously run a 3-credit college class and a 6-credit college class? Or are you getting rid of the Montco Spanish?
So we lined up, and we're looking at the courses currently, but what we believe is that the Spanish 3 currently aligns to Pitt's dual enrollment course. And I don't have the exact numbers here with me, but we believe it lines up to that. So it wouldn't be anything separate. We are not going to have a Pitt dual enrollment course spent German 3 and a regular German 3. We would make them synonymous. And after talking with Pitt, that's exactly what they do across the state.
Okay, but with the Spanish, though, if we already offer it from Montco, would we be eliminating the Montco Spanish in order to replace it with Pitt? Or
Absolutely not. Pitt will in no way remove any opportunities from Montco. Our goal with this entire program is to increase opportunities, not decrease them. We will keep our same Montco course offerings, and we're going to be trying to aggressively increase those also and get kids working on that. But we're also providing another opportunity for students that may be going to Pitt or want a different opportunity with that.
Okay, and just an FYI, my friend told me that unless, now this is in her experience, unless students are going to Pitt, which obviously at Montour High School in Western Pennsylvania, a lot of kids go to Pitt. But she said unless they go to Pitt, they rarely transfer as the credit that they came through as. They usually just transfer as a gen ed, not any specific, like the AP can usually transfer as that class. But she said the Pitt rarely do unless they're actually going to Pitt. So just an FYI.
The same holds true for Montco. I mean, we see that also with Montco.
Right, well, that's a community college, though. Pitt isn't.
Right.
You would hope that the Pitt classes would transfer as, as those credits, just like an AP, but she said in her experience they don't.
Gotcha.
So I don't know if Pitt's telling you otherwise, but, sort of getting it from the horse's mouth from someone who works with it every day and has experience in it. And also, I noticed when I was looking through, she invited me to look through her class selection, course selection for her high school. And wow, you guys should look at that sometime. It was impressive. But their Pitt classes are weighted usually as an honors class rather than an AP class. So in my mind, that puts, at least in their minds, the Pitt doesn't quite stand up to the AP classes. And she did tell me that. She said that very often the Pitt classes are the prereq to an AP class. Not all the time, but sometimes, many times, unless it's a Pitt 200 level class or a high 100 level class. So I think it's great for the students to have the opportunity, but I think we need to just keep our eyes peeled for, just make sure that it is the right opportunity for our students. Anybody else? I spoke for a while. I apologize. I've done a lot of background work on this one.
The only thing I wanted to, I guess, point out on the particular class is, one other thing that's going to be a benefit to these classes once they're offered is the students that eventually do apply for University of Pittsburgh will get an automatic free entry into applying. They won't have to pay any additional fees to apply to the college. So in other words, in essence, if they go on the, I guess, what is it called when you go and you apply for all the different schools? I forget the little program, some kind of computer program where you apply to like 50 schools at the same time and such like that. With University of Pittsburgh, if they happen to take this and use the Pittsburgh version, they would actually not have to pay to apply for Pittsburgh. The other thing to also make sure parents would be informed about would be the grade. The grade that they get in this class would transfer as a grade to Pittsburgh.
That was something that my friend said was at times somewhat detrimental to her students because, they were transferring in automatically with a 2.5 because they got a C in the class. So just, but that's the student's issue, not ours.
We give them the opportunity, we don't guarantee the outcome. But I want to thank you both, and everybody that participated, not only in the curriculum committee, but also doing the further research here, and also to the staff for looking into these. As you mentioned, it's a terrific thing to be offering all of these different classes. Obviously, if we were hiring individual teachers to teach each of these classes, it would be a significant encouragement to the school district. And by doing this with the cyber courses and the courses with the colleges and the credit, it's just a huge benefit for our students, and again, helps the taxpayers as well. So, we have a motion. Any other comments?
Yeah, there's just one minor point that was mentioned. If you take the courses at Munco and go to Munco and get your associate degree and then transfer to another school for a 4-year degree, and Munco has articulation agreements with most of the area colleges, engineering schools. Those credits that you took at high school would count eventually for the bachelor's degree, depending upon the nature of the articulation agreement. So there is a back door that would allow some of these credits to ultimately count towards a 4-year degree. But it's a back door.
And your predicate is that basically you have to complete your associate's degree.
Yeah.
You just can't take some courses and, right. Okay. I'll look around once more for questions, comments, worries, or concerns. If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. So ordered without objection.
Moving on to 12.2, dual enrollment for Penn State University. We ask the board to approve Penn State University dual enrollment program as submitted.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Mrs. Grimm and a second from Mr. Leach on approving dual enrollment to Penn State. Is that a local school? Does anybody have any questions, comments, worries, or concerns? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. All right.
Moving on to 12.3, Career Pathways Communications. We're asking the board to approve the Career Pathways as submitted.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Grimm and a second from Mr. Leach to approve 12.3, Career Pathways. Does anybody have any questions, comments on this? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. So ordered without objection.
Moving on to 12.4, conference attendance.
I make a motion to combine 12.4, 12.5.
We have a motion from Mr. Parker and a second from Mr. Hutt to approve 12.4 and 12.5 together. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed say no. I'm assuming there were no questions.
Moving on to action items 13 under miscellaneous. This is the Pottsgrove Recreation Board member. we're asking the board to approve, we recommend, the board's recommending to approve Mrs. Grimm for the position for the Pottsgrove Recreation position, board member for the term of 5 years.
No, you're not allowed to do that. I'm sorry, parliamentarian. Is she allowed to nominate herself?
No, just teasing.
I think so.
I was saying quietly over here.
She is? Okay, you are. She already did, and we have a second. Who's the second?
Second.
Al was second. We have a motion and a second. Patty did,
Over here, just with us.
uniquely. Does anybody have any questions or comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. All right, 13-2.
13-2, the Pottsgrove Recreation Citizen Member. We're asking the board to nominate Sydney Coleman for the position of Pottsgrove Recreation Citizen Member for the term of 5 years.
We have a motion from Mrs. Grimm and a second from Mr. Parker to nominate or to elect our Recreation Citizen Member, Pottsgrove Recreation Board Citizen Member. Does anybody have questions or comments? No? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Before we get to 13-3, which is approval of policies, we didn't actually get a chance at our last meeting, because it was snowed out, to read out the minutes where the committee discussed these policies for the board. May I ask for a readout of those at this time? Thank you so much.
Well, they make you the chair.
That's all right, I appreciate that. If you wouldn't mind reading out the policy.
All right, so the minutes from the policy committee held on January 22nd, we discussed, we came back to a number of policies and looked at a couple new policies. We started with a return to policy 810, transportation. This policy had been on the agenda for several months. It originally came before the committee due to suggested changes from PSBA that were driven by the new legislation found in the Every Student Succeeds Act. In previous meetings, language was added to ensure proper training of the drivers as they interact with our students and provide a safe environment. Additionally, we discussed how the drivers are evaluated by our vendor. When we finished that discussion, we put it up for a 30-day review. Anyone add anything to transportation? Any questions regarding the transportation policy? All right, then we went back to policy 355, crowdfunding. This is another policy that has been in discussion over several months. It was originally brought to our attention because there's some activity that was taking place in the district that there was no policy to govern the collection of funds in the matter. Dr. Harney found several other districts that were working on the same policy and used one that had been completed by another district. Original discussion centered on how much, if any, student information should be shared in these, quote, campaigns. The language was added to prevent the sharing of student contact information. The language was also added to refer the policy to Policy 702, which had some similar wording. At a previous meeting, it was decided to place the policy on a 30-day review, but shortly after our meeting, some concerns came up, so we held off on that. So on that night, the discussion around this policy began with the previous concerns. Mr. Nestor sharing that he had concerns about the language, stated that the monies raised should not be deposited as district funds. He stated that the money should be deposited into student activity funds to properly account what was raised and that it is being properly utilized. Mr. Nestor was asked to reach out to other districts in the county to see what they're doing with such a policy and how they're handling the monies received. There were also questions as to the language concerning employees not using, quote, contracted working time. There was a discussion about how a person might know if the campaign was approved by the district and if there is a way to highlight that information. Dr. Harney mentioned the need to have a more unified approach with this policy and several other policies concerning the raising of funds by students, teachers, and non-affiliated groups. It was decided to revisit all of the fundraising policies in a future meeting. Anything to add? Any questions regarding that policy? All right, then we went to policy 815.1, acceptable use of the computers, network, internet, electronic communications, and information policy. This policy was brought to the committee for revision to cover a very specific concern about the use of the 3D printers. Additionally, Mr. Bickert suggested several other changes that made the policy more current by removing references to devices that are now obsolete. We discussed language around obscenity and potential sexual content or intent. Basically, the wording that was suggested to us, we went through it to make sure that everything was clear and what we didn't want allowed was not going to be allowed. Also, there was some concern about the language talking about the district's right to confiscate and monitor activity on personal devices. The policy was tabled with the thought of comparing it to the electronic devices policy and to continue the conversation about the monitoring of non-district devices. With this policy and all policies I encourage that we're continuing to work on, I encourage you to take a look, and if you have any thoughts, comments to share with the committee. Any questions regarding that policy? Okay, policy 206, assignment within the district. This policy revision was brought to the committee to bring the policy in line with current established practice. It was discussed that this policy does not change how we operate and is needed for the proper operation of the district. Dr. Harney stated that there also need to be language that clarifies, quote, within the 60 days, school days, parents may request the students stay in the original school, provided parents agree to provide, transportation. Dr. Harney also stated that the 60-day timeline matches the current trimester system used in the elementary schools. We moved that to 30-day review. So it didn't change what we're doing, it just brought policy to current practice. Any questions regarding that policy? All right. We had some discussion regarding policy 237, electronic devices, and the purpose of that was because of the new SRO body camera use, and we wanted to make sure that our policy didn't prohibit their use in the schools. The discussion began concerning that policy that I just referenced. In that policy, there are restrictions on the use of such devices, but as was discussed, this is now part of the officer's uniform and daily routine. So, to fix that, it was suggested to add language to the section, quote, exceptions to prohibition of electronic devices to allow for the policy to match the current realities. The language will read, number 4, body camera and recording devices used as part of a police action. Once that was fixed, we decided it was ready for 30-day public review. Any questions regarding that policy? Okay. Last policy, policy 006, meetings. Dr. Harney explained the okay, so this policy was one that we had to vote last month. Mr. Leach caught something, so thank you for that. And basically, it was just a misprint, and that was corrected. So that's probably up for approval tonight. And that was all the policies we looked at. Any questions?
Yeah, I had a question about that particular policy
Meetings,
here.
yes.
In the new format, am I reading it correctly that if someone needs to abstain from voting for the reasons like you just abstained because of your husband, they have to actually they have to submit in writing that they're going to the secretary of why they're abstaining and then announce to the public why they're abstaining?
That
Is
is,
that correct?
that follows the statute, it follows the Ethics Act. It says if you're not abstaining for a school code reason, not to parse words with you, Al, probably Patty's husband's a bad example because that's covered under the school code. But, you know, let's assume that you're doing something that would suggest that you're doing business with yourself, and so or giving a contract to somebody you're involved with, and you feel you need to recuse yourself under the Ethics Act. The law does require, and that policy is apparently patterning the statute, that you're supposed to announce it and give a note to the secretary.
Okay, all right. And then the second part I had a question regards was the use of technology if the member is not here. Was technology brought in that? Are they going to make sure that they have something available when a person is not here? Were they discussed about bringing in some type of, I guess, conference phone and such. I just know when we've done that, it's been a nuisance.
Yeah. Good question. We discussed that very specific concern, and Mr. Bickert's in process. I don't know if that's been completed in assuring that we have the technology, but the proper technology for that to work. Yeah.
Do we have any other questions? Okay, so then a motion to approve action item 13.3, the policies identified therein, would be in order.
Thank you.
We have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, wow. Al was fast. We have a motion and a second from Jim and from Al for action item 13.3, the 4 new policies as identified.
Do we need to first approve the minutes?
No. No, you were just reading the minutes as a polite thing for us to refresh us on what these things we're about to vote on. So, does anybody else have any other questions? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. All right.
Okay, moving on to number 14, the JOC update.
Yes. The JOC, we held our meeting on February the 4th. It was New Orleans, was the theme for the sold-out community dinner. Again, every month we sell out on these community dinners. Update on Skills USA. Congratulations to Pottsgrove students on their accomplishments at the district level of the competition. Diesel Tech senior John Liss, who won 3rd place in diesel equipment. Cosmetology junior Brianna Hoffman won 3rd place in aesthetics. So congratulations to those students. The CCAP, which is Careers in Culinary Arts program, students are moving forward to their final competition round. This means that they will be eligible for some level of scholarships. Sydney Ullman and Sierra Reinauer will be competing for several full scholarships to a variety of culinary schools across the U.S. 36 students attended the Philadelphia Art Show on February 8th. Students were allowed free access to the show following a presentation by the Auto Dealer Association. Students learned of many job opportunities connected to the car dealerships across the state. Auto Technology class hosted a tech day for Jeep. Jeep meaning Jeep enthusiasts of Eastern Pennsylvania. There were 75 Jeeps and owners. They visited February 9th. The Auto Tech program, along with the collision and diesel programs, provided 3 different workshops. All comments were positive, especially when it involved our students that did the presenting. As of Monday, yesterday, we have 282 applications. That's up. Last year, we had 260. The deadline for applications for this coming school year is coming upon us, March 15th. Car show is scheduled for May 4th. Upcoming flyers and ads will be coming around the community soon. Level 2 and 3 seniors will be taking part in the mock interview day on February 27th. This allows students to garner more experience in interviewing for their future careers. Senior recognition, and I'm going to repeat this each month so we can all get out there. Senior recognition will be held May 22nd at our Pottsgrove Middle School. The next JOC meeting is Monday, March 4th, and the community dinner theme is Mexican. Proud of those kids over there.
Good question.
You have a question?
I always have a question for you. We started already our preliminary process for the budget, and we got our things. The JOC started, and have they given you any preliminary numbers
We're
yet?
going to have a presentation here.
Okay.
And the advantage that we have this year is that Superintendent of Record, Dr. Shirk, has been in on those conversations already, so he's, I'm sure, feeding information back to Dr. Nestor and Mr. Nestor so that it's seamless.
Just real quick, we've had an opportunity to meet with the superintendents from the other sending districts already, and there was a slight increase in the budget. We did ask Chris to go back and look at a few areas that we thought could be looked at, just like we do in our process. So he's in the process of finalizing that information, and then he'll be joining us in the next month. Moving on to the Facilities and Op, we're asking the board to accept the minutes from Facilities and Operations Committee meeting.
I'd like to make a motion for 15 committee items. To approve 15-1, 15-2, and 15-3.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve 15-1 to 15-3 on the committee items. Does anybody have any questions or comments on those three items? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed say no. So ordered without objection.
Okay, and 15-4, Mr. Parker already
Right.
reported out on that for us. And then that takes us down to, anything else, Mr. Parker? I don't want to, okay, great. 15-5, Curriculum Integration Technology Committee, met on 2/19. Mrs. Custer.
Sorry, Mark messed me up.
I'm distracting
Again.
I'm like the little kid in the back of the class.
He is.
Is that right?
He's poking me.
Come on, knock it off.
All right, so our meeting on February 19th, we started out with the Apple Distinguished Schools Showcase, which will be held on March 20th and at the high school, and we'll be hosting other schools that are interested in sort of following in our footsteps possibly, and the other schools' administrators and teachers, I'm sure, and just give them an overview of what we do, why we do it, how we do it. They'll have lunch, they'll be able to go visit some classrooms and see the Apple products in action. Apple does pay for some of that, but we pay for lunch and stuff like that. So anyway, it's a nice honor for us. We get to, show off what we can do and how good we are at it. Our next thing we talked about was the PA Future Ready Index, which is basically taking the place of SPP. That was a long conversation about that. There's a lot of information that goes into that. It's a very complicated and convoluted way that they figure out these numbers. And even the state isn't quite sure how it's all working yet. There was a lot of apparently questions that were asked by our administration and others, and they were given sort of like big I don't knows as answers. But basically what it comes down to is we aren't doing as well at the high school as we would like to be, but a large part of that is based on some of this new ways that they're figuring these numbers out, and one of them is chronic absenteeism, which they don't account for like medical excuses for absenteeism. So a student who, had a surgery or, has a chronic illness and is out for medical reasons is still considered chronically absent in the eyes of the state. So that's difficult with a school our size with the amount of IEPs we have, that many are based on medical issues. Anyway, we're working on that. We're going to try to get our numbers up. Our next curriculum meeting, we are going to be discussing keystones and possibly making them a graduation requirement so that we can encourage the students to hopefully score better, and that would help us in some areas of this PA Ready Index, or what did I call that? Future Ready Index. So that will be at the next meeting, so if anybody has any interest in putting in their 2 cents on that issue, you're more than welcome to come. The last part we talked about was MAP and the measures of academic progress, and just showing how the MAP numbers are indicating where our kids are, where they need to be, and how well they're doing. That's about it. Was that short enough for you, Mark?
Took 2 hours and meeting and cut it down to about 5-10 minutes. That's well done.
That's what I'm all about.
One more thing.
The only thing I wanted to piggyback off of that what they discussed was, there's one thing I do want to point out to the public and to everybody else. I know some of our scores have been lower than probably expected, but if you look over at our SATs, our APs, and all our map data, you'll see that the growth has been exponential of what we expected. Our SATs are far above what they were years ago. Our AP data is much better than it was a few years ago. It's that little keystone testing that's just been really kind of holding us back, which is why that's going to be something that the curriculum committee is going to discuss at the next meeting, and then obviously the board will need to discuss what we want to do about that. That's the one little thing that seems to be holding us back right now from showing improvement in all areas. So that's just what I wanted to point out, those three good things, though.
Thank you.
I think our minutes pointed out well, and he emphasized the point, but would you kind of explain to folks how the Keystone fits into the Future Ready and why you're talking about making it a mandatory graduation requirement, what effect that would have on the Future Ready?
Be glad to. What our tests have shown is that our local assessments in MAP, the kids score well because they want to see the progress they make from one time period to the next, which is the self-reflection, but also on a national level with math and reading. The SAT is a nationally normed test. People need that to get in somewhere and to go somewhere and accomplish something, as well as AP. So anytime that we offer a test that means something to our students, really from 2 to 10, and then obviously our upperclassmen who take the SAT and ACT even as well, they score well, they do well, and our results, as Mr. Leach pointed out, show that. But we haven't made the Keystone exam a graduation requirement. And since we stopped that piece, 12, 13, Dr. Ziegler, I'm trying to think since we stopped that piece, we were a district that scored in the 80th and 90th percentile in algebra and in ELA, and we were up and coming in bio, I think in the 60s or maybe even low 70s, because it meant something to our students, and because they had to perform to meet a requirement, and also we were allowed to remediate. So in the process, if you weren't proficient in Algebra 1, then you would get a remediation piece built into your schedule, and then you would take the test again. And I would say probably the only thing that I know Dr. Ziegler and his staff is looking at right now is how many times do you have somebody take the test? I think at times we have students take the test 4 times. That might be a little much, but I think I'm going to go out on a limb and say I think 2 times with remediation would be sufficient, and then we would offer an alternative assessment that would check the box as far as the graduation requirement is concerned. And that could even possibly be the SAT or the ACT. And the challenge, Mr. Linger, I put to the committee was, if you're not going to make it, if you're not going to put skin in the game for our kids, and you're not going to make it important for our staff, then don't grade us on it, as an organization. But the caveat is our teachers and our administrators get evaluated on that. And in fairness to them, every year, there's a SPP score that gets put on a teacher's evaluation and administrator's evaluation based on student performance. It's not an SAT score for Dr. Ziegler. It's not an AP score. It's the Keystone Algebra, Bio, and ELA. And that's true for our PSSA in grades 3 through 8. So we just felt that it's time for us to visit it again and have our students and community know the importance of that, because we as a school district are evaluated with the Keystones and PSSA.
Was the Keystone, what was the prime driver behind getting rid of the Keystone? Was it the fact that we had too many test days as it was, and that was one that wasn't mandatory by the state?
The state really, the state backed off on it as a graduation requirement. And so when they backed off, we backed off. School districts did that, but the school districts that have performed better over the years are the ones that maintain that integrity of that test and said it is important to our community, it is important to us, and and they did that. So I just think we need to sort of settle that piece sort of like once and for all as a school community, because it's really not, when students opt out, they opt out of the Keystone, but they score very well on SAT or AP. We're losing some of our top scores that could really put us in a really good position in the eyes of the state.
Well, we can't settle anything for too very long, because this board will only exist as this board for another year. Go ahead.
No, great question. And I said that to the committee. I said, this is a decision, this is bigger than the superintendent, because there's going to be more people. This is bigger than the board, as well, because there's going to be, that'll change over time as well. So we really have to think of that piece and how important that exam is, what kind of requirement that needs to be, and then really as a district, sort of decide what kind of weight that we put on the things we already do. And I think that, when we look at what we do, if we would take that out of it and do our due diligence on Keystone, we are showing that our top score, our top tests, the SAT and the AP, we do extraordinarily well, and we have 80% of our students making growth as proven at the MAP level. And even with those pieces, probably 80% of those groups, we are scoring at or above the national average. So there's a lot of positive things that we're doing. We show all the signs, as you will, of a district that's moving in the right direction. It's just this one little hook that keeps snagging us, and that's what it is. We don't have a chance to remediate. We don't have a chance to enrich, and we just get what we get.
Well, thank you very much for that discussion. I appreciate that. So that takes us to item 16, new business. Who would care to start?
Do you mind? I'll be quick.
Okay.
Yeah. First thing I'd like to do is I'd like to congratulate Dr. Harney. And Dr. Harney is going to receive an award this week. It's the William K. Dowler Award for Excellence in Human Resource Administration. And this will be presented to him later on this week at the Pennsylvania Association of School Personnel Administrators. Obviously, it's presented to a practicing personnel professional who's a member of the association, but also the most key parts here, the person possesses qualities and skills often most demonstrated as an outstanding personnel administrator. Also with this, Katie Margolis will be presenting Dr. Harney with a check for a $1,000 scholarship to be presented to a student in our school district in honor of this award. So I think Dr. Harney deserves a well round of applause for that recognition. And I just would like to give Mr. Nestor an opportunity really to talk. I know he had an opportunity to share with you electronically, but just an update on the state budget and an update on our district preliminary budget. Mr. Nestor.
Thank you, Dr. Shirk. I'll try not to be too long. This is going to be a real high-level discussion. But we had planned to kick off our budget season prior to our last meeting in the operations and facilities. Obviously, the weather got in our way and we couldn't do that. So I did record a video that you all should have had access to and hopefully had a chance to look over. But we're going to have to hit the ground running now because we missed that meeting. So I wanted to start off with just a brief overview of the governor's budget. In general, it's very positive to public education. And everything I've heard since the governor's budget address has been positive, that it doesn't sound like there's any large landmines in his budget that might cause extensive delays. That being said, it still needs to go through the process, so what was contained in his budget may or may not come to fruition in the form that it is. That being said, the budget did add additional funds in the basic education subsidy and the special education subsidy across the board, which can add a couple $300,000 to our budget this year, depending on where the end numbers come up at. And then there were a couple other things that are going to affect people throughout the state. The first, he's proposing an increase in the minimum wage from $7.25 to $12 an hour. So that will impact not only, we will have some people that impacts, but everybody in the Commonwealth would have to come up with that $12 too. So we'll have to see how that plays out. He also proposed a minimum wage for teachers in the Commonwealth of $45,000. It doesn't impact many people in the southeast very much, but in the southwest part of the state, there are some districts that have an average teacher salary of $37,000. So it could have some significant impact on some districts. He proposed reducing the mandatory school age to from 8 to 6. So that's not impacting us, but there may be some rural districts that may not require students to come to school until later. And introducing a fee to municipalities that use state police as their police force. And they're in a separate law, possibly he's looking at potentially implementing a Marcellus Shale extraction tax, but it's not contained in his budget document. So all in all, very positive for Pottsgrove, very positive in general for public education. Moving to our budget, we're starting out a lot better than I had anticipated last year at this time. We're starting out with a budget deficit of about 2.1%. So that our Act 1 index was 3% this year, so we're almost a full percent below that to start with, and that does not factor in any of the potential retirements we may get with a early retirement incentive this year for our teachers. We do have some open items that we need to work on through our budget process. One, we need to get clarification from the state on what these subsidies are going to be for Pottsgrove, because right now they're based on old data, and the total funding hasn't been confirmed by Congress. We need to get our results from our early retirement incentive program. Tuitions are always very volatile in Pottsgrove. Since we did the presentations, I put together the presentation, we know of at least one student that we're going to have next year that's going to cost us $85,000 that wasn't in the budget. So that's going to vary up and down until we get to the end line. We had discussed adoption of the third language and expansion of the art program for animation. Those components are included in the budget, but certainly that's a discussion for the board to have whether or not it stays there. And finally, we have a meeting on Friday with our healthcare benefits consultant to set our rates for next year. Currently, we're holding, in the budget, we held medical premiums stable, and we projected a 10% decrease in our prescription premiums. We think there's more room for further reductions. So we're going to nail that down hopefully this week and then be able to reflect those changes accordingly. We're going to continue our meetings, our discussions, or actually start our discussions at our prior to our next board meeting at the Operations and Facilities meeting. We're going to have most of the discussion in the Operation and Facilities Committee meetings. They're going to be held on March 12th, April 9th, and May 14th. And I would encourage you all to come and learn about the budget so that you know what you're being asked to vote on later in May. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nestor.
I actually had two questions. First question was, and if I'm reading this wrong, Evan, please let me know. I read something in your tweets yesterday that Representative Cerisi was some type of bill that was going to be introduced that would say the school districts did not have to finalize a budget until 30 days after the state finalized their budget. Is that true?
That's what he said.
That's something you heard of?
No, I hadn't heard.
Because that would be a big difference.
That would.
Okay, we haven't heard anything of that.
I haven't heard that, but. No.
Okay. 'Cause that's what I read. Second question I had is in regards to the third language exploratory program and the animation. I understand we obviously never approve the final budget until usually in May or June and such like that. But are we putting the district at an undue burden if we don't sort of come to an agreement prior to that? When you have students that are going to be asked to select, what classes they're going to be taking, which would include these, hiring people and stuff like that. Is this something that we really want to wait for the decision until May for that particular piece? Or something that the district and the board really needs to decide ahead of time, say, hey, yeah, we know we're going to want to do this?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the hiring component especially, knowing prior to the end of school so we could start recruiting professionals to fill the spots would be wonderful. But I think the course book is either out now or it is out. So we should know fairly shortly what the interest is in the programs to help inform the decision. But yes, I think the earlier we make the decision, the easier it would be for everybody involved.
Thank you, Mr. Nestor, and good question, Mr. Leach. I think we really need, by April, we need to have, we need to have some type of, because we need to advertise that by the end of April. That's, the sooner the better, but I think for us, and after that committee meeting in April, we really need to make a decision whether it's going to, and stay or not.
When does course selection close at the high school? So when will we have our numbers?
Next, thank you. You're right. When would you have the numbers, Dr. Ziegler?
Probably the second week of March, like
Yeah, I think
halfway into March.
Can we have a time for a board meeting on the 12th?
Would, for Dr. Ziegler, for our committee meeting on the 12th, would it be?
We should have some preliminary numbers.
That's fair. Okay, good. I think we're okay. I mean, I think we should be okay, both spots. Yeah.
I just have a really quick question, Dave. Upland Square has 2 new stores going in right now, Burlington Coat Factory and Ross. I tried to look up the tax parcels up there, and I couldn't, I was having a hard time making heads or tails of it. Will those stores pay a separate tax, or is that sort of like leased land and the owner pays the taxes on that big chunk of land where Giant and Five Below, Best Buy are?
Right now, the only separate tenant up there, or separate property owner, is Target. So I would assume that anything that's attached to the core row of stores would probably be part of the primary owners.
Okay, so our tax, the taxes won't.
Oh, they
Does
should
it change?
They should certainly go up as
Okay.
a result of adding value to the existing.
Okay, that's what I
structure.
thought. I just couldn't,
Yes.
like I said, I was having a hard time figuring it out. I saw some of the other pads, like the bank and stuff like that. They pay separate.
Right.
And Target, but the rest I was.
Yes.
little
Yeah,
confused
I would
on.
expect an increase there. However, the magnitude of that is undeterminable at this point in time. So we'll just have to wait and see. That'll be a positive for us during the year, probably.
Would it be similar to whatever, like TJ Maxx is probably going to be, it's probably going to be about the same size as the
That was
Burlington.
all done originally.
Right,
So I think the original was $17 million or something like that, and that encompassed everything from Best Buy to the end. So what adding another store on the corner of that might do, I can't really say. It
Okay.
hasn't happened.
All right, thank
Yes, we will, but you know what? Can we get through all the new business, and then come to public comment? Would that be all right? Okay. Do you have anything else?
Yeah, I have one, but. Go ahead, you had mine. Oh, mine's the same old drum I've been beating for a little while. Bring it back up to the board. It's not for discussion now. It's going to be something hopefully in the future. Just throwing it back out there. Phoenixville School District approved starting times to be changed to a later time frame based on all their study and such. Everybody knows I'm a big proponent of starting the school later and such like that. I know of at least 4 or 5 other schools that are going to also be considering it. It's something that's going to be I think a movement going forward, as into a lot of the school districts are going to have to start considering it and such like that. This is not for us to discuss right now. Just keep it on your mind as you hear about the other schools. I'm all for it. Let them all do the research, and we'll piggyback off their research so we can, say, okay, we don't have to spend the money. We can just use the research. Obviously, it has to be tailored to our district if we ever decide to do something like that. But it's something that if you're seeing out from other school districts, just keep your eye, because it's something that we may want to consider in the next year or so.
Can I jump? I hate to go, but I have been monitoring that as just doing my due diligence for the district. And our middle school, Phoenixville Middle School, is starting they're opening their doors at 7:50, and they're starting their day at 8. We start our day after 8 at the middle school already.
So we're low.
So we're in a better position.
It's the high school.
The high school, okay, we start we start at 7:30, correct, Dr. Ziegler? Yes. And then of course our elementary obviously is later on, 8:50ish, 9 o'clock. Okay, so we have 3 bus runs. So it's going to be a matter of economics so I've looked at it because I was getting ready for it, like when that question was going to be asked. So I think, we have to really decide if we want to invest in the transportation piece. And actually, when you look at the data, and this was because I follow Phoenixville, 8:30 was really 8:35 was actually the best optimal time for secondary students. They settled a half hour earlier, and it was due because of transportation. Yeah. The money driver was, so they didn't just say, hey, we're going to do what the research says. We're still going to keep that cost factor in mind. So I think we're halfway there already with our middle school start time. And of course, with the help that our middle school students and our high school students give to an elementary student at times is still a big piece. Unless, I think that would have to be, the community would have to weigh in on that piece. But we're in pretty good shape when it comes to that. And then the biggest caveat would be how much you want to spend on transportation.
Western Center.
And Western Center, yeah. I mean, they're a later start just because of transportation. So I have thought about it, and I think that you'd really have to, it would really come down to, the transportation piece and having 2 bus runs, not 3.
Yeah.
That's how we save.
Like I said, this is a future, just keep your eye out, because depending on how all the other school districts all move.
But, yeah.
I just wanted to reach out to Brenna. I went to, when we had the board workshop, I had already committed to my granddaughter to go to the Spark of the Wave event, and we talked about this, so I just wanted to thank the club, because we had a blast, but I was going to ask Brenna if she could tell us what they did, because the kids did such a good job, and there were so many dads there, wasn't there? But thank you.
Thank you. Spark the Wave, near the Valentine holiday, we did a craft night here at the high school. We set out flyers to the elementary schools, and we had students come here to the cafeteria, and we did Valentine's-inspired Valentine's Day themed crafts. And we had all kinds of different things. There was coloring, there was decorating shoe boxes, because a lot of the classrooms at the elementary school were doing Valentines, so they could take the shoebox in and have their classmates give them Valentines in the box. There were plastic cups that they could decorate with googly eyes and make it look like spiders with hearts and all of that. So the kids really did have a great time. It was great to see all these people come out and
spend time with their kids doing arts and crafts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, does anybody else have anything else for public comment tonight? If not, we'll go right into,
Thank you, sir. Do I recall correctly, did we at one time, or do we still get a piece of the retail profit as a form of revenue for the school district?
There's a mercantile tax that we do get a little bit of revenue on
So
from
we
too.
can anticipate that with the addition of these 2 new stores and a third that's still coming, we'll see that go up.
Well, hopefully, yes. Yeah.
So do they.
Right. I would hope they think they're going to bring in some revenue, yes.
How much is that, please? Is that a percentage?
The revenue for the mercantile tax, if we can talk afterwards, I'll give you a number.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. President.
are there any other public comments? Sir?
Just a question, comment from me about the Keystones. I would hope that...
I'm sorry, I think we know who you are, but we're
Oh,
supposed to
sorry,
make
John
sure
Ross
the
from
minutes
Pottsgrove.
you're here and who you are.
John
I know
Ross
who you
from
are.
Lower Pottsgrove. I would hope the district as a whole would visit, when they visit this, bringing it back as a requirement, include the community in that decision. You know, we've had meetings in the past on these large decisions. I would hope that we do that again. And I have one major concern about bringing the Keystones back, and it concerns one group of students. The group of students I'm concerned about is our IEP students. The IEP students are under a lot of pressure as it is with their IEPs and having to perform and getting it done. And then we throw these Keystones on them, and they have to graduate. I know from experience this puts a lot of stress on our IEP students, because most of our IEP students, if I'm not wrong, have issues with test taking, quiz taking, and those things. And I think the Keystone really affects those people the most. So when we look at this, we have to look at every little branch of people who it affects student-wise. And you're not going to like this. I really don't care that it may affect these teachers or these. I care about the students. And these group of students that are already under all this stress, it hurts them. If anybody's familiar with the IEPs, and I know most of you are, they're under a lot of stress to perform, get their stuff right, with all their regulations they have to follow, and the district has to follow, and then put the Keystones back on them. I have firsthand experience with it with my child, and now my girlfriend's child who goes to a different district. The Keystone's killing this kid, having to perform for the Keystones and then get through his IEP. I just hope we discuss this as a whole, as a district, with the parents, students, and the district. Thank you.
Well, listen to me, and if you don't like what I say, then you can comment, all right? Two things I would say to that. Yes, well, we do try very hard to look at all the affected folks who are affected by everything. And all of the people, all the students are certainly a key part of that equation. One thing that I would say is, by definition, an IEP is an individual plan. If it's not a state requirement to take the Keystone, is that right? Correct. If it's not a state requirement, an IEP can be modified to exempt the student from it in discussion with the staff. Do I understand that correctly? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when a student has an IEP, part of the responsibility is on the parent to know and be aware and to positively participate in the development of the IEP, so that you know your student best, you know your child best, and so it's incumbent on the parent to suggest things that need to be added to the IEP. It's a requirement to review that every year. So I kind of put it there in terms of that. So there is an existing mechanism to take care of those students that we have, since it's not a state requirement. We will still consider them, obviously we would, but I'm not going to let any one thing be a driver. We have to look at all sides of as many different things as we can do. So we will have a robust discussion. We will have public comment, debate, and inclusion in meetings. All right?
The only thing I wanted to add on is that with the Future Ready Index, it's actually driven to make sure that all of our subgroups are given the resources necessary to increase their numbers. Actually, if I'm not mistaken, we have to increase them by half. We have to like double. So we want to make sure that all of our students, including in the subgroups, including our IEPs, are doing that well. And as obviously we've already stated, that although the discussion will be to make it a graduation requirement, it doesn't necessarily mean it is a mandatory graduation requirement, as there will be other options to make sure that the students are individually looked at as into what's necessary for them to graduate.
All right. Does anybody else have any comments for us tonight? If not, motion to adjourn would be in order. We have a motion, we have a second. Wow, I got 3 on that one. Motion. We had a second from Al Leach, and we got a motion from Patty. Right. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed?
They were all